This is AM Agenda. With me now, Liberal MP Tim Wilson. We've seen quite a divide within the government, the cabinet, on this issue of super for first home buyers. Christopher Pyne this morning has called on colleagues to pull their heads in, that it's not government policy and it'll push up house prices. What do you say to this debate right now?
Well, I agree that colleagues should make sure that they are working constructively towards a good budget outcome, as the Leader of the House actually has argued. I have to say, though, I'm personally sceptical of the proposal that some people have floated, but I'll wait and see the details, because it's the details that will decide the policy, and that'll be announced in the budget.
And indeed, the ERC meets today. The Prime Minister has also expressed scepticism about these ideas in the past and reiterated that yesterday in Mumbai. But other senior figures like Matthias Cormann, the Finance Minister, Peter Dutton, as well as Kelly O'Dwyer, they're also apparently arguing against this idea of tapping super. What's your fundamental reticence about this as an idea?
Well, housing affordability is fundamentally an issue of supply and demand. It's not a heavily traded product in the same way that going to the supermarket or something like that is and buying fruit. But when it comes down to it, we have a problem principally about supply. There is a supply problem in Australia with the rapid growth of population in Melbourne and Sydney, outpaced by the amount of available new stock and housing. So if you increase the number of people who are then going to be able to buy a house, or increase the demand side, which is what would occur if people were able to access their super, you're just going to see prices go up. So or unless somebody has some model or some method to demonstrate otherwise, I remain sceptical.
And, well, the main lever really at monetary or other policy prescriptions is the interest rate move by the RBA. But if that happens, if there's an increase, then cities like Adelaide cop it, as Nick Champion warned before the break.
Well, I mean, if you want to keep house prices low, you need to fundamentally focus on the supply. And that isn't just actually about things like interest rates, so that's an important part of it. It's also about state government planning, regulation and policy, which has often restricted available supply, as well as differences in policy between new suburbs and old suburbs. So there's no silver bullet on this issue, and there's no one-size-fits-all. And Labor should realise that with their ridiculous position on negative gearing, which is focused on providing a cheap silver bullet, but actually will have no real effect on housing affordability.
Is that a risk then for the government as it raises expectations of a housing affordability package? Because there isn't a silver bullet, and in fact, it's marginal to what government can do here, isn't it?
Well, governments can do things which can increase supply, but principally those are at a state level. If you want to look at why there are housing affordability challenges, they're principally down to state government regulation and the issues of stamp duty, because they stop people trading housing so that people move out of large houses into smaller houses, because there's a high transactional cost, there's a high tax associated with doing so. So most of the reforms can be done at a state level, but the federal government should, of course, do what it can to constructively help young people buy housing, and that's what we're looking at. And all ideas should be on the table and discussed, and the merits should be considered.
Are you worried about the way that this has been portrayed, this particular debate, that it's a bit messy for the government?
Well, any debate that's dealing with something as complex as housing affordability will have a certain degree of messiness, but we should be focusing first and foremost on what is actually going to deliver the outcome, and highlighting the absurd position the ALP has, which is that they actually want to start taxing losses. So this is what happens when you get rid of negative gearing in the way that they want. They want Australian investors to be taxed on their losses. Now, normally you tax people on their profits. Sometimes if you need to overreach, you might say, let's tax people on the revenue. But they're actually going one step further and trying to tax people on their losses, which is an extraordinary proposition they've put up. And no one's actually talking about the consequences of the policy they've put forward. What will happen is we will have new suburbs where the cost of renting, which is how most people start housing, being cheaper in suburbs and not others. What that will do is actually create pockets of privilege around established suburbs in capital cities, rather than actually making sure that everybody has a capacity to be able to buy and rent or buy in suburbs that have been around for a long time.
I want to ask you now, finally, about this other issue that I touched on with Nick Champion as well. Pauline Hanson's call for a boycott of halal-certified chocolate, including from Australian-made producers like Cadbury. What do you say in response to this?
There's so many ways we could try and be polite about this, Kieran, but I think we just need to be direct and blunt. Pauline Hanson is talking complete BS. And when it comes down to it, there are many different certification standards that companies, food companies, sign up to so that people will buy their product. It's entirely voluntary. They don't have to do it. If they don't, they lose a section of their commercial market. When it comes down to it, people, if they want to buy chocolate for Easter, and my stomach waistline suggests that I probably will, they should buy a product that they like based on the quality of the product that they like. Some people like, from Nick's state, Haig's chocolates, which are a fantastic product. Some people like Cadbury, which I think is produced principally in Tasmania, and they should choose it, and they should completely ignore Pauline Hanson. But more than that, it's becoming increasingly hard to take Pauline Hanson seriously when she comes up with rubbish policies and ideas every second day without any real consideration of the consequences. It's just feeding to prejudice and fear within the community for no basis, simply because she thinks it'll win her a few votes, a few cheap votes.
Tim Wilson, talk to you soon, and yeah, happy Easter. We'll see you in a few